One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday, and this is the best day of the week. Not just because it's UFO Disclosure Day, and not just because the weekend is almost here, but because this is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. I am your host and the Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute. We are a free market think tank that's been around for 42 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show bring you the data, the science, the truth that you've been, that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will help us out by bringing friends to view this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and also like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to leave comments underneath this video. We do read them. These all convince YouTube's very mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program. And that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, because big tech and the legacy media are not big fans of the way we cover energy and climate on this program, Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to support the program, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS, or you can scan the code right here on the screen, and you can join other friends of this program who help bring it to the world every single week. And we also want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, the CO2 Coalition, What's Up With That, and our friends at Heartland UK Europe. Let's get started. We have a very big show today. We have with us, as usual, Anthony Watts. He is the senior fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change, What's Up With That. We have Sterling Burnett, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is also the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center for Climate and Environment Policy at the Heartland Institute, and Linnea Lukin, senior fellow for Energy and Environmental Policy at Heartland. And we have 2 producers behind the scenes, Andy Singer, who has to leave very soon, and Keely Jukala. Thank you to you both for helping to bring the show. And we'll do our best to be as smooth as possible. But, usually we don't have any chit chat, but I'm going to ask you something, Linnea. I'm going to spring it on you. This is UFO Disclosure Day, and I tweeted actually this last night. I tweeted, unless half the stuff I've seen on the Y-files concerning aliens and UFOs comes true, I'm going to be very disappointed. What do you think of UFO Disclosure Day so far?
Well, we got another video of a little blob zipping around. I actually have not had time yet today to look into it. You know me though, Jim, I'm going to be all over that like white on rice later. Right. I am a big fan of the UFO community. I'm not bought in fully, I'll admit, but I love it anyway. Kind of like I love the Sasquatch stuff. I love all of that stuff. I love cryptozoology, all of it, just for fun.
Yeah,
and the UFO stuff is very fun. There are some things that are more compelling videos and evidences than others, that's for sure. One of the fun things about the UFO community are the I want to believe, but I'm very much willing to debunk, any given video. And I think I would probably categorize myself in that category. The I want to believe, but I can easily tell how some of these are just not what they're saying they are. And so I have fun. The audience might hate me for this, my current position on most of the UFOs that we've seen, even the ones with what appears to be extremely strange, movement and stuff, is that they're ours and that they don't belong to aliens. So that's my theory right now.
I'd like to say that, look, I believe there's got to be life in the universe somewhere. Whether they've mastered the ability to travel the long distances in the time required to get here and visit us, and not conquer us at the same time, I have questions about that. If they're an exploring race like human beings have been an exploring race, we'd be in trouble. But concerning Sasquatch, I know he exists. And the reason I know this is because I watch Kansas City Royal baseball games, and he's a baseball fan. Every time Vinny Pasquantino hits a home run, he runs across the back of the outfield out there. It's all over the cameras. They've got video evidence, so that's true.
Well, I got some good news for Anthony here. In one of the UFO disclosures today, we have discovered that it is UFOs that are actually the ones responsible for chemtrails. So,
Oh, well, I thought sure it was going to be UFOs are responsible for climate change.
There you go.
But, we'll go with chemtrails. That's
we'll go with chemtrails, right?
There was a film about that back in the 80s or 90s. Charlie Sheen, if you can believe it, he was a meteorologist, and evidently aliens were here juicing the CO2 increase to make the Earth habitable for them.
Nice. All right. Well, I should have resisted. Look at this. Our show was already derailed. I know how we can get it back. We could get it back by covering the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Keely. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. Okay, so I'm going to play a couple videos here for you. The headline here is New Al Gore Idiocy. It's hard to resist playing clips from him and commenting. A couple weeks ago, The Hollywood Reporter and the Sustainable Entertainment Alliance teamed up for an inaugural celebration of Hollywood's environmentalism with a special appearance from former Vice President Al Gore. I actually cannot believe this was the first time they've ever done this, to be honest. The Sustainability and Entertainment Honors event held at Hotel Bel Air was timed to The Hollywood Reporter's annual sustainability issue and was led by a keynote conversation between Gore and actor Bradley Whitford in honor of the 20th anniversary of An Inconvenient Truth. Now, you might remember Bradley Whitford. He was great in Billy Madison. That's his greatest role. I highly recommend it. Anyway, Al Gore made two claims. In one, it was said that he said that a new ice age was coming. I don't think he quite said that, although what Bradley Whitford was trying to get him to say, that's what he was trying to get him to say. Let's just play the video here. Let me put this in show on stage, and let's bring up video.
Way.
There we go.
That movie that I mentioned the day after about the Gulf Stream shutting down, well, this morning in one of the English newspapers is a whole big article summarizing the recent dire warnings of the scientists who found yet more confirmatory information that this is a very real threat within the next 25 years.
Right. And for people who don't remember from the movie, you talk very explicitly about if the Greenland ice shelf melts to a certain point, which seems probable given what happened in Antarctica.
In Greenland today, Greenland is losing 30 million tons of ice per hour, night and day.
And if there is a tipping point here where the gradual threat of climate change becomes immediate, where if that happens and the Gulf Stream ceases to exist as we know it, we're in an ice age in like 10 years.
No. It would take a long. I mean, I'm not.
Just go with me. Go with me. I wear makeup, Al.
Version, but I've spent a lot of time with him.
Go.
But it would be bad. It would be very bad, and would be bad on a scale that is beyond anything we can compare it to today.
Right. Okay. There's a couple of things I want to parse from that clip. And Linnea, I'd like to actually start with you. I think it's important for us to be a lot more fair with Al Gore in a saintly way compared to the way Al Gore is and his alarmist cabal are to our side of this argument. It seemed that obviously Bradley Whitford believes that The Day After Tomorrow and The Inconvenient Truth are actually part one and part two of the same film. But, so because we've had friends reach out to us and say, I think I heard somewhere someone said that Al Gore said that a new ice age is upon us. In fact, I got a link to a story that said that Al Gore said that, but when you look at the video, he really doesn't say it. But it seemed like he really wanted to.
Well, I'm first going to address what you said earlier about the show being derailed. That was all you, Jim. That was all you talking about aliens. So you don't get to blame us for that one. All right. Second, speaking of aliens, so Al Gore up there doing his same old song and dance. I suppose that if the Antarctic or the Arctic suddenly lost all of its land ice and dumped it all into the ocean, that I would believe that it would have some pretty extreme impact on the weather, at least in Europe and North America. I don't think that very many scientists are actually suggesting that the Arctic is melting at anywhere near the rate that it would require to make some kind of a huge impact on AMOC. I think that all of this stuff is coming from, Anthony can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's all coming from like one particular guy who just keeps putting these AMOC studies out. And they all are, pretty alarmist. But at the same time, you can go right now into probably Nature or somewhere like that and find studies saying that it's doing the opposite. It's these patterns are strengthening or they're weakening or they're not doing anything at all. You can find just as many papers saying different things based on these different computer model scenarios. I just, I guess he may or may not be around in 25, 30 years when they do this reevaluation of whether or not that we are, covering the Statue of Liberty in a glacier, like in The Day After Tomorrow. But I don't know. I don't think he knows what he's talking about. He just says stuff that he sees in the news.
We just recently ran a piece on climate realism on the AMOC. The USA Today covered it as if it were fact. Gore talked about, one of the newspapers in Britain, talking about it. Well, guess who that was? It was The Guardian. Anything alarmist is reliably alarmist there and doubled down on. And so here's this article that I wrote for Climate Realism. Keely, if you can bring that up, you can see that I thoroughly debunked this. There's a complete lack of any proof whatsoever that the AMOC is going to shut down. And USA Today used the same stupid comparison, saying, "Oh, this is just like The Day After Tomorrow. Oh no!" And it's just bogus beyond belief. It's all fear mongering, and it's all about the script that these media outlets keep following. They find some paper, and the paper says X, and then they say, "Ooh, that's bad. Well, let's take that and make it X plus 7, or X squared, and let's go with that headline." And that's what they do. They make these things into these scary headlines for two reasons. Number one, they truly believe that the world is going to hell in a handbasket from climate change. There's no debate about that. And secondly, clickbait sells. And that's all this stuff is. It is irresponsible junk journalism clickbait.
But they can't decide what disaster is going to come to pass. If the ice caps grow, then sea level rise will reverse. And yet I keep getting things saying sea level rise is increasing faster. Well, that can't be the case if the ice caps are going to grow. In addition, Gore, Jim is right. Gore didn't say that we'd have a day after tomorrow, 24 hours, everything goes haywire.
Or that even a new ice age is coming.
Or even that a new ice age is coming. He might be smart enough to know that the ice age is driven by the tilt of the earth and the sun, very long cycles. It has nothing to do with CO2 levels. But he did say, it seemed to me early on in his response, he did say, you're right, evidence is mounting, or the science is becoming something like that. And I'm sorry, a paper based on climate model projections is not evidence or data. I repeat again, climate models are tools. They don't provide data. They don't provide evidence.
No.
And what evidence does exist is all over the map. Some say it's slowing down. Some say it's speeding up. Some say it's staying about the same as for the last 60 years. And as far as his, I think Jim's going to go. I'll go ahead and go back to Jim.
Yeah, I just wanted to get to another point. Another thing I wanted to parse out of that is the way Al Gore described how much ice is melting at Greenland. I forget the precise number that he had, but it reminded me of a post that Chris Martz, our friend, Chris Martz, the meteorologist, had posted. He's actually covered this a lot, and I don't have to bring it up on screen, but I remember that he noted that the Greenland ice sheet, and you can correct any of these things if they're wrong, team. But he said the Greenland ice sheet contains 2.9 million gigatons of ice. That's equivalent to 2.9 million billion tons. And that at the rate that Greenland ice is melting, if that number is accurate, it would take more than 11,000 years for the entire Greenland ice sheet to melt. Do those numbers sound right to you?
Well, here's the, no, they don't sound right. I mean, the amount of ice sounds right. That sounds right.
Right.
But the idea that, I think he said 60,000 tons, 60 million tons of ice are melting a day, 24 hours a day. That's just a lie. That's just false. He's got to know it's false. Because what happens is every year, now, in the past, throughout history, ice melts in Greenland during the summer months and regains ice during the winter months. But if the ice was melting at the rate he's talking about, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't show in the total ice mass measurable. And Anthony has there's Anthony's Climate at a Glance post on that and Linnea's video. We've covered this. But more importantly, what this study did not say, or does not look at, is the fact that, what Al Gore is ignoring is the melting. Often the melting occurs inland, creates a pool. The melting occurs one day and refreezes the next day. It never reaches the ocean. So you can melt all the ice inland that you want to, so long as it's refreezing inland, and it has no impact on the salinization of the ocean currents, the AMOC, or sea level rise. Either one. It can't affect either one if it all refreezes. And if you ignore that refreezing, then you're cherry picking what you want to talk about.
They ignore everything. Right? They only look at the melt. But when you look at the total amount of ice on this graph here, it tells it all. It completely tells the story about how incompetent the media is. You look at the magnified graph of ice loss. Oh no, and then you compare it to the total amount of ice that's in Greenland. It isn't even a blip. It's nothing. It's inconsequential. And every year, Greenland melts, icebergs calve into the ocean and so forth, and then new snow piles on in the winter, and it adds to it. So yes, there's been a net loss over the past few years, but is that relevant? Who knows? You don't know how long this has been going on. You don't know what the trends are in Greenland. And the biggest failure of humans who think that climate change is a real threat is the fact that they don't have any real understanding of the long lifespans and the long cycles that go on in the earth. The cycles that go on in the earth, melting, freezing, ocean currents, whatever it is, lava, magma, volcanoes, earthquakes. All of this stuff is extremely long term compared to the human lifespan. And so people only focus on what's happening now, and what's happening now isn't relative or relevant to the long term trend.
One more thing to think of, Anthony is right. We think in these short terms. We do know a little bit something based on proxy data about the past in Greenland. And we know that even during since the agricultural revolution, since the last ice age came, so 12,000 years ago, we know Greenland ice has been smaller and Greenland had more land exposed than it has now, that the ice sheets have grown over time, even during this interglacial period. And how do we know that? They find shell middens inland, dozens of miles from the sea where they should be, but they were covered by ice. That means that was open area underwater before then. They find all sorts of data like that shows, sorry, folks, the ice waxes and wanes, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with human activities.
All right. Well, there's another, geez, my notes are a little screwed up here. There's a second video here from Gore that I wanted to play. And, well, this is a topic we have to touch on here and there. I'll just let the video speak for itself. If you can add that up there, Keely.
But the fossil fuel industry has become hegemonic where all areas of policy that affect their business model is concerned. If you go to the international conferences, this year it'll be in Turkey, last year it was in Belém in Brazil, et cetera, et cetera. The largest delegation, larger than the other 10 largest delegations put together, are fossil fuel lobbyists. And they've spent billions and billions of dollars deceiving people using the same model. And the book and the movie, The Merchants of Doubt. The model was written by the tobacco industry, and it was taken and adopted by the fossil fuel industry, and they're still at it. They even run in school board elections in some key states, no kidding, and local elections. They have such a huge amount of money focused on this task. And they're way better at capturing politicians than emissions. And all around the world, they have captured enough of the politicians and policymakers to be in effective control of the policies that affect their business model.
Show me the money.
I've been waiting to get that drop in for quite a while. Anthony, if the fossil fuel industry has such a huge amount of money focused on this task, where's our money? I am so sick of this talking point by them. Al Gore has a net worth of $300 million. His monthly carbon footprint is bigger than all of us on this stream together over a year, possibly over several years. I know this is a topic that gets under your skin too.
Yeah, well, part of it had to do with, he sold that TV channel of his, which was all about climate change. And he sold it to, drum roll, please, the Arabs.
Yep.
Yeah, he sold it to the Arabs. Big oil. Ooh, gosh. I would really like to see somebody stand up in the audience when he starts spouting this stuff and say, Mr. Gore, can you answer this question, please? How did you arrive here at this venue? I took a private plane. What does that private plane run on? I'm on the spot. He's talking about how terrible fossil fuels are and big oil is, and yet he uses it every day. What a hypocrite.
Yep.
I don't have too much to add here. It's the same old song and dance every single time. It doesn't I guess it's effective for rhetoric, whether or not it's true. But how does he explain why oil and gas companies are some of the biggest investors in the world in green technology? Why do they lobby for more regulation? on oil and gas because they do.
And they got it.
Especially the big oil
They
lobbies.
got Keystone XL. They got Keystone XL shut down.
Yeah. So what? Again, as you already said, where is the money? Where's the money going? They have made so much headway with the Exxon thing, where they had like some guys at Exxon, some scientists at Exxon who were not convinced by the climate alarmist kind of rhetoric that was starting to spin up at the time in the 80s and 90s. And so Exxon was like, okay, we're going to look into this. And what did Exxon end up doing? They ended up being one of the biggest investors in green stuff.
Yeah.
It's completely ridiculous.
BP went beyond petroleum. Shell became a big wind company. They all lobbied for carbon taxes. Why? Because it shuts down their small competitors. They can pay it. The competitors can't. They go out of business. That helps their hegemony, which is what Gore was trying to say. The problem is, if they were so all powerful. He made it sound like they are the Death Star. That Darth Vader is working at the behest of big oil, and they have that kind of control. If that was true, why would they be in dozens of courtrooms and probably hundreds of courtrooms across the country fighting climate lawsuits if they could just shut it all down? Why are they one of the most regulated industries in the country and probably the world? You got to remember, outside of the U.S., most countries don't have private oil companies. The largest oil company in the world is called Saudi Aramco, and it's owned by the government, the sheikhs. In Nigeria, private companies don't own the oil. The government does. That's true as well almost everywhere else, even in England, the North Sea, that's controlled by the government. So it's not oil companies, it's governments, and it's the most regulated industry that I'm aware of. If they really had the kind of power, they would wave their magic wand, say there's no place like America. Ooh, click our little red shoes together. There's no place like America. And they get rid of all the regulations. The lawsuits would end, and they wouldn't be spending money on all this stuff. But they are. Yeah. So it's just a false narrative.
I just want to.
That's what Gore is famous for doing. He put out not a documentary. He put out a docuganda. It was propaganda posing as a documentary. And he was rewarded with an Academy Award for it because the left in Hollywood ate it up.
Yeah. Just before we leave this topic, there's just one more thing about that quote that clip from Gore that got under my skin. He said, quote, "They have captured enough of the politicians and policymakers to be in effective control of the policies that affect their business model," unquote. Okay. If I want to grant you that, how long has that control been in effect exactly? About a year and a couple of months. Biden gave the Greens everything they wanted, as Lene has said, and more, including direct payments of billions of dollars, our money. And the green agenda has been on the rise and dominant for most of the last 2 decades. Al Gore is full of it, and he's losing. He knows he's losing. And he actually even alluded to what's going to be our main topic today. So I think it's time for us to move on. I usually only Jim rant on the In the Tank podcast, but I just couldn't help myself. God, the guy drives me insane.
Well, Jim, wait, just before you leave, you're right. Look, Biden 4 years, Obama 8 years, but even going back to Bush, what did Bush say when he was president? The second Bush Jr. He said we were addicted. He called it an addiction to oil and gas. And
he was in the business, for crying out loud.
And he was in the business. So let's not pretend that the government has been giving oil and gas everything it's wanted for all time. It hasn't. You're 100% right there, Jim. But it's not just the 4 years of Biden. We've had nearly 20 years now of massive incursions into the private sector to restrict and restrain oil, gas, and coal use.
Yeah, the Biden EPA was not throwing gold bars off the Titanic at us. They were throwing it at their green friends. And that's corruption to the highest level. And I hope someday somebody gets arrested for that. All right.
Yeah,
all
I
right,
just for me, sorry, Jim. I just one more thing. For me, that's just a conversation ender immediately. Like if someone comes, we all get this all the time in emails and in comments and whatever. If someone like opens their conversation or has a major part of their point against you is that you're funded by fossil fuel interests or whatever, I just tune out pretty much. I'm not interested in people who don't even care enough to figure out what the reality of the world is at that basic of a level. I just don't have time for it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to pull Linnea, and I'm going to talk about gold bars, but not the ones that are being thrown off the Titanic. I'm going to be talking about the gold bars and other precious metals you can get from the sponsor of this program, and that is Advisor Metals. And I just surprised our producer, so hopefully she can bring it up on the screen. If you're like me, you listen to a ton of conservative shows on YouTube and Rumble and other places, and you hear tons of pitches for buying gold and silver. And
The
other precious
fossil
metals.
fuel industry.
Oops. That's all right. There we go. But yeah, so if you hear tons of companies that are pitching you to purchase precious metals for your retirement and for just your portfolio in general, and there's a ton of companies out there that can provide that service. But I want to tell you why you should go with the sponsor of this program, and that's Advisor Metals, and it's because of the man who runs that company, and his name is Ira Bershatsky. He is the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he's not going to want to be one of those guys that employs these high pressure tactics or engages in deceptive marketing ploys. You get a lot of that in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you are dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better to have on hand when it comes time to liquidate this very valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you're going to have your investment sent discreetly and directly to your home. Ira, by the way, is advertising on this program because he's an America First patriot. He doesn't donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with the proxies of the Chinese Communist Party. And he, like us, abhor the machinations and schemes of things like the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and whatever place that Al Gore happens to be hanging out. That is why we're so proud to have Advisor Metals as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your investment portfolio, or if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, please go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there, and Ira will be in contact with you to make the whole process so very easy. Again, that's climaterealismshow.com/metals, and be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps us in this program while you're helping yourself. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and thank you to Scott in the comments who told me that's a great segue. You should just do the ad read now, and so I did. But we can move on now to our second item. It's the first time we've ever done that, Scott. So thanks for the suggestion. Our second item today in the crazy climate news of the week is, I call it, We Can't Sell Z-Bugs. This comes from our friends at Climate Change Dispatch. Bug out. Major Swiss grocer ditches insect-based foods after years of poor sales. And of course, we were told for years we have to go to insect-based proteins because it's harmful to the environment and we cause climate change by wanting to eat meat. Let me read a little bit for you. The Swiss retail group Coop is largely removing insect-based food products from its product range. This decision follows years of weak sales figures since their launch in 2017. Back in 2022, competitor Migros had already withdrawn comparable products from its shelves, even though the retailer had previously offered cooking classes related to them. Ugh. At that time, Switzerland legalized mealworms, crickets, and grasshoppers as food. Coop subsequently launched products from the supplier, Acento. However, customers rarely purchased them. Therefore, Coop is now selling off the remaining stock. Linnea, you got to get on the phone right now. You can act now and have a great deal for food for your chickens.
Yeah, that's true. Now I'll just wait until they go on sale at Tractor Supply again. I still have most of or like maybe a fourth left of the 5-pound bag I bought last time we talked about this. So the chickens love it. The bluebirds love it. Cardinals love it.
I think the reason that these insect-based
Anthony, you're having
I
a
think
little bit
the
of audio
reason that
problems.
these
Go ahead, Anthony. I'm sorry. You're having a little bit of audio problem there because you're remote. I know. It's okay. Oh, Sterling, would you like to weigh in before Anthony comes back?
For once, it's Anthony and not me. My first thought. I guess my second thought is the reason there's a poor sales is because, I think Barnum said you can fool some of the people all of the time and all of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all the time. Well, there were very, very, very few people. That's that small sum of the people you could fool all the time that ever bought into buying insects for food. I've seen those gourmand pop parties where they do the tasting and someone says, "Oh, we'll eat a cricket." I've never seen them where they say, "I'll eat a mealworm." But I have seen people eat crickets. But look, this was never, ever going to be, you can't fool all the people. And you can't even fool most of the people on eating insects. Their ancestors spent generations developing food products so they wouldn't have to scrabble in the dirt and eat insects for protein. I can't imagine. I'm honestly a bit befuddled as to how this ever even became an honest topic of food, eating. I don't know anyone who wants to eat insects. I just don't. And it's not because I only run in conservative circles. I've never run into someone said, we had this great party last weekend where we served a mealworm souffle. I've never met that person. I just, how they ever thought they were going to pull this off. They just really thought that the world would be blinkered by the term climate change and believe. And yet, less than half the people think it's going to affect them in their lives. The half, and even the ones that do, of the 46% that do, they're not willing to spend $1 a month on their electric bills to fight climate change. So they're going to start eating bugs. That's like that. Of all the things restrictions they could impose on me, they can say, you can't drive. And I'd say, well, I'm not happy about it, but I won't drive. Oh, you got to, set your thermostat much higher and much lower. I'm not happy about it, but I won't do it. You have to eat insects. That's the last one. That's where I go to the gun safe, start loading up. It's like, no, I'm not eating insects.
Anthony, I think it's really funny that they've been for years flying to Davos for the World Economic Forum on private jets to try to convince the world for years to eat bugs because that's best for the environment while they're on private jets.
Yeah, well, I think the real reason behind the failure of people to embrace eating bugs is the lack of complementary products showing up in the grocery store. For example, you've never seen Cricket Helper on the shelves.
I knew a joke was coming.
A TV dinner with mealworms.
Right. Well, yeah. So, Linnea doesn't do it. She doesn't do her grocery shopping at Tractor Supply, and we're not going to pretend we're in Tractor Supply while we're shopping either in the regular grocery store. So, all right. Our third item today in the crazy climate news is getting old causes climate change. This comes from our friends at actually, I have the wrong link in there for you, Keely. That's my mistake. But this is from What's Up With That. I'm afraid I got some bad news for many people in our audience, as well as all but one person on that show. And it's because the headline from What's Up With That is apparently getting old causes climate change. Comes from our friend and frequent chat participant, Charles Rotter. There was a time when the climate conversation had villains you could point to without needing a spreadsheet. Smokestacks, jet engines, maybe a coal plant belching away like it had a personal grudge against the atmosphere. Simple, tangible, satisfying. Then things got creative. First it was your car, then it was your diet, then your vacation, then your thermostat, then your dog, then your coffee habit, and at some point the message quietly shifted from some activities produce emissions to your existence is a rounding error away from a policy problem. And now we've reached the next logical frontier, aging. Charles cites a paper from the journal, from the journal Energy Policy. Anthony, this was on your site. I'm sure you're familiar with. There it is. Thank you for finding that, Keely. I'll let you take a whack at this first. I don't want to say you're the oldest on here. I'll just say that you should go first.
Are you somehow saying I'm the oldest? Is that what you're saying here?
We may not have enough time for you to get through this. You better go.
Oh, thanks. Well, you know, when I first saw this, I thought this has to be a joke. I mean, and then I thought, well, maybe they're blaming it on maybe old people have more flatulence and methane or something. I don't know. But it just goes to show you the length at which these climate alarmists will go to try to prove something and basically say, you know, everything causes climate change. Everything that you do in your life is bad. You know, the lack of eating bugs is bad. The eating meat is bad. You know, driving a car is bad. All these things. They want you to live in mud huts like people in Africa, you know, and they're even finding ways to basically say that's bad too. The thing is that this is just another modeling study. And as Sterling loves to point out, modeling is not data, it's not reality. And so this is just another alternate form of reality that these people come up with. Basically, they're saying that because of the sedentary lifestyle and certain things that older people tend to do, that causes more climate change. Well, boo hoo. Who cares? I sure don't. You know, and it's the most disturbing thing about this particular article and this paper behind it. In the scientific paper, they get into politics and they basically say there needs to be policies put in place to mitigate this. So the first thing I thought of when I saw that was this is just like the movie Soylent Green. You know, you get old, you get recycled for the sake of the planet. That's what these people think.
You know, it could be like Soylent Green. You're right. Honestly, I'd eat Soylent Green before I'd eat insects. So, you know, cannibalism before mealworms. But I guess my thinking is maybe they're saying, and I've got to admit, I haven't read the study. Maybe they're saying because older people in general have more disposable income. You know, the wealthiest segment of society is the oldest segment of society. Maybe, and because we know that wealthy people spend, you know, do more emissions. Study after study has shown they emit more per capita than other people. Maybe that's what they're blaming. But of course, you know, they've been blaming old people for stuff for a long time. Back in the 70s, I think the saying was, "Don't trust anyone over 30." And then when I was young, there was a movie called what was it? It wasn't Soylent Green was one, but it was filmed here in Dallas. It had Michael York. They basically, when you reached a certain age, you went to this ceremony and they celebrated you reaching this age, and then you were sent off to a wonderful Logan's Run. There it is. Thank you, Peter Halligan. Logan's Run, where you were supposedly sent off to this wonderful place, and it turns out what they were doing was they're killing you. I think you reached 30 and they were going to kill you, and supposedly they weren't killing you; they were sending you to this wonderful place. And someone found out. It's like, hold it, I'm about to turn 30. I don't want to die. So it's like that's what these people are all about. They're misanthropes. The younger generation is typically more worried about climate change than the older generation. And so they want to blame the older generation. They were already blaming them for climate change, right? It's their parents' fault. They live cushy lifestyles. They were raised in cushy lifestyles. They were raised in homes with you know, indoor plumbing and climate control indoors, where we really can control the climate. And they have their power books and their iPads and their cell phones charged all the time, unless they lose their chargers. And then they say, "Mom, Dad, buy me a new charger." And yet they want to say that you've destroyed the planet. I'm going to TikTok about it. It's a sad statement about the state of climate alarm that just aging gets you blamed.
Yeah, this is more of what we talk about all the time, the like stupid modeling studies that don't matter. Like, what are they going to put a cap on how old? I mean, I say that, but I do believe that they would do that in places like Canada and the Netherlands and whatnot. They would put a cap on you, how old you're allowed to be. I think if you got
the people fleeing the country would be the first climate refugees.
Yeah, really. But no, these people, I mean, I'm not going to say this for all climate alarmists because I think there are a lot of true believers out there, but there is a huge chunk of them who don't love the environment. They don't love the planet. They just hate people.
Mm-hmm.
They just hate human beings.
Yep.
And that hatred drives all sorts of insanity. And it's why they take great pleasure in trying to suggest that they take away things from average people that they enjoy. Like eating meat or like driving your own car, that kind of thing. They hate you. They want you to suffer. They do not love the planet. So I of course not, hashtag not all, but I really think that is the driving philosophy behind a lot of these people.
Yeah, they hate people who don't agree with them and who aren't their friends, right? I keep hearing how billionaires are the problem, how we hate billionaires, how we need to tax billionaires. The left is unified. Bernie Sanders, AOC, what's her name in Massachusetts? Pocahontas. They all hate billionaires, but they're all getting behind a billionaire, Tom Steyer, for governor of California. Because there's a billionaire we can agree with.
Yeah. Well, it was important. It is a crazy climate news item because it, as Linnea said, climate alarmism is ultimately at its core a dystopian, anti-human movement. Our friend Patrick Moore, who was one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, has talked about this quite a lot. In fact, he wrote a whole book about it on why he left Greenpeace, and it's because he joined Greenpeace to save the whales and to oppose not nuclear energy, but the proliferation of nuclear weapons. And one day he looked around, listening to his fellow Greenpeace people, looked around the room and said, "You guys hate human beings. I'm not in that business. I'm not here. I love humanity. I love life. What are you guys doing?" And he left. And unfortunately, it's just been this way for decades.
There should be a movie about it. Fear and self-loathing on planet Earth.
There you go.
True.
There you go.
All right. Now, this is the time where I would usually do our ad read, and I'll just mention again, please go to climaterealismshow.com/metals if you're interested in adding precious metals to your portfolio. But we can go right now to the main topic of this. And I love the thumbnail that Donald Kendall from Heartland made for us today. Our main topic today is based on a piece written for the May 1st edition of Climate Change Weekly. You can go to heartland.org, and up at the top there is a button called subscribe, and then you can get the email newsletter sent to you every Friday, almost every Friday. Sometimes Sterling is slacking and he takes a Friday off once in a while, but we still call it Climate Change Weekly. And it's a great roundup. If you like this show, you're going to love that newsletter. So I hope you will go over and check it out. But the idea was that net zero, which is now a global movement, it certainly was when Biden was in the White House, but it's been dominating the politics and the policy of Europe now for many years. But that it's now dying of 1,000 cuts. And his headline here, in his first item in the Climate Change Weekly from May 1st, says countries and industries are abandoning or reducing net zero commitments. And I'm going to read a bit from it and have Sterling take it from there. Since the swearing in of Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States, climate alarmism and the political machinations in the public and private sector it spawned have experienced the death of 1,000 cuts. Sterling writes, I have previously described here at Climate Change Weekly some of Trump's actions that are draining the climate swamp of resources, supporters, spirit, and momentum. These include defunding climate boondoggles across federal agencies, pulling the United States out of the Paris Climate Agreement, withdrawing the United States from dozens of climate monitoring and wealth transfer organizations, most importantly, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and rescinding the greenhouse gas endangerment finding. All these actions and more have left the progressive climate elite bereft and seeking solace and continued support, with said solace and support waning in both the public and private sectors in the United States and internationally. The cuts are coming fast and furious. Evidence suggests that with America no longer playing the fool, cast as a villain in the climate scam, other countries and companies around the globe are increasingly refusing to do so. Some entities are withdrawing from their climate commitments entirely and re-embracing fossil fuels. Others, while still embracing climate alarm to a degree, are reducing their emission reduction pledges, cutting funding for wind and solar, pushing out the timeline for net zero, acknowledging the continued necessity of fossil fuels, for a while at least, or some combination of above. Now, Sterling, you cite in this piece several specific examples of one of those 1,000 cuts that are killing net zero around the world. Maybe you can run through some of them for us.
Yeah, well, let's look at the international stage. Two things happened recently. The sub-meeting of the of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the IPCC met to determine when they would publish the next assessment report. They adjourned after a week or more of meetings, and their conclusion was, we can't even determine when we're going to publish the next report. Without the next report, how are we going to guide policy? They couldn't even decide on when they would publish the next report. Another meeting held in Colombia it wasn't a UN sponsored thing. It was a meeting of what I like to call the coalition of the willfully stupid. 60 countries got together in Colombia and agreed, by the way, that they're going to phase out fossil fuels. Let's talk about some of the countries that weren't there. China, the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. The US, India, Russia. In other words, all the major emitting countries failed to go to Colombia to sign this agreement. In fact, it's worse than that. It's not just that there are 4 or 5 countries that are big, but they decided not to go. No, 60 countries. That sounds impressive until you realize more than 200 countries signed the Paris Climate Agreement. So less than a third of the countries that were on board with Paris are on board with this new agreement. That's a drop-off. That's a loss, not a victory. You go to Germany. They have decided that we still keep our goals, our climate goals, but we're not going to penalize people if they don't make the changes. So we will still support you if you want to install, you want to move to certain vehicles, you want a heat pump, you want to install a heat pump, we'll still give you subsidies. But unlike when we said by law, you must do these things, now we've said, we'll give you support, but we're not going to penalize you if you don't actually meet the deadlines. Other countries are doing the same thing. And this is important. Private industry is backing out. As soon as Trump was elected, even before he swore the oath of office, banks had pulled out of all the net zero banking alliances. Now, automobile manufacturers, 18 major manufacturers, said they are either scaling back or ending their EV programs. Did that coincidentally coincide with the fact that subsidies dropped off the table in the U.S.? Not coincidentally, by the way. And the thing is, that's ridiculous. The people that were buying these things didn't need the subsidies, but as soon as the subsidies went away, they stopped buying them. So that's happened. As we mentioned earlier, oil companies, look, they're spending $25 billion on climate crap. But for the first time in 8 years, that spending declined. It declined from more than $38 billion. So they're going backwards. The point is, with the Duke university has said we're ending our $4 billion spending on sustainability and climate. It's just one thing after the other in the private sector, in the public sector. As soon as Trump stops funding something and gets us out of these things, these countries say, well, if we can't rely on the U.S. to give us money, if we can't rely on the U.S. to be the patsy, we can't afford to do it. And what does that say? If you really believed the world was going to end because of climate change, just because the U.S. doesn't do it, does that mean you're not going to do it too? It seems to me you'd redouble your commitment to save the earth, to save yourselves. You say you're going to be destroyed. So you redouble your commitment to make up for what the U.S. isn't doing. Instead, they're backing off. That means they didn't really believe it in the first place. Just like Obama didn't believe seas were rising. And that's evidenced by the fact that he bought a beachfront property as soon as he left that office.
Yeah, if European countries thought that China and India were, causing the planet to hurtle towards total destruction, they'd be like bombing coal plants and stuff in China. Well, I mean, I guess with as much as they could anyway, they'd be doing sanctions against China until they stopped, their industry and stuff. They'd be doing all these things against the real big polluters, and also big carbon dioxide emitters. But they're not, because they don't actually think that it's a world-ending problem. It's good riddance, kick rocks. net zero. Sorry to our European audience that your countries are still kind of hoping that they can continue this until Trump is out of office, but I think you're going to run out of money before he's out of office on these programs, especially if the cuts keep coming. So I think that they're in a whole lot of trouble in the net zero area. But I think that the IPCC and a lot of the kind of international organizations on climate made a big miscalculation about a decade or so ago, because it seems when you read the history of this stuff that they're like alarmist, but fairly moderately alarmist on it, into the 80s and 90s and maybe earlier 2000s. And I think they began to feel like people weren't alarmed enough, or they weren't taking it seriously enough. And so they tried to kick the fear into a higher gear on it. And they started saying a bunch of stuff that just wasn't even in their AR reports. Like hurricanes are getting worse, that kind of thing. That doesn't show up in their actual scientific reports, but they started advertising that and pushing it in the media. They came up with all of these different organizations that were targeted towards ramping up the fear in the general public. And what happened, instead of people becoming more alarmed outside of some activists about climate change, people just tuned it out. They just decided either one, that it's so extreme and such a huge problem that they couldn't possibly do anything about it. And they're looking around at their governments not doing enough to stop the catastrophe that's just around the corner. And so they get frustrated and give up, because they're like, well, the world is over anyway, so who cares? Or people look at their extreme forecasts and their extreme the things that they're asking you to give up and stuff, and they say, I just don't buy it. It's just not showing up in reality. It's just not showing up in what I experience from day to day. So this just doesn't come across as believable to me, and they move on. I think that they made a big miscalculation in trying to ramp up the fear on that stuff. If they just had said, we're going to have some sea level rise because of melting ice caps or whatever, and coastal communities need to invest in infrastructure to accommodate that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have been like, opposed to that. I certainly wouldn't be. But instead, what they say is, you have to give up meat. You have to give up all fossil fuels and all of the downstream products of fossil fuel processing. All of it needs to go away, and it has to happen right now, or else the entire world is just going to explode. it's just not compelling. No, I'm not going to give you control over the entire global economy to prevent a couple of millimeters a year of sea level rise. Sorry, no.
Or a fraction of a degree in Celsius in the temperature 100 years from now.
Yeah, what they started saying, you're right about that, Linnea, is after AR6 came out, maybe a little before, but certainly after, they really ramped up the claim that, oh, the IPCC it's too cautious. It doesn't go far enough because it's really worse than they say. So yeah, it's the gold standard. They always say it's the gold standard, but they're too cautious. They're not even following the science. It's worse than you thought. I will say this about the EU. You know, I mentioned this in my article. I forgot to say it before. So Germany is backing off some of its stuff, but the EU as a whole is backing off some stuff. Simple things like reporting requirements. The EU had demanded that companies above a certain level of revenue have to report their greenhouse gas emissions and start reducing. Now they've scaled it back. So 80% of the companies that were covered before are no longer covered. And why is that? Well, it's not because they think climate change is any less scary. It's because their economic prospects and more importantly, their electoral prospects are even more scary. Right-wing parties are rising and they do not believe in the climate hoax. And people are tired of paying higher energy bills and being put out of work when their factory moves overseas. And they say, oh, we can't afford that. So they're even scaling, even EU as a whole is scaling back some.
Well, in the United Kingdom, and I know we have a lot of viewers in the UK. We have guests on this show from UK quite often. Actually, try to get one on today, but they couldn't be on because it's such a crazy and busy and happy day in Great Britain because of the local election results yesterday, where Labour got absolutely shellacked. I saw clips on Twitter last night of, they said, well, we thought last time was bad when they lost 66% of the seats they tried to defend. Last I looked last night, I didn't check this morning, but it was like 85% of the seats that the Labour was trying to defend last night were lost. This was the first national election in which I think you would fairly say that Reform UK was actually on full footing. And Reform UK had a fantastic night last night in the elections in Great Britain. And what is one of the main pillars of their agenda? Getting rid of net zero, because it is a economically disastrous policy. It's a freedom stripping policy. It's a policy that will drive your country even farther and faster into absolute ruin. And it won in a sprint last night in the UK. So I think these are, I think you're right, Sterling. I think net zero has been dying of 1,000 cuts. It got hit in the face with a sledgehammer or with a scimitar or an axe. Yes, last night in Britain.
Yeah, maybe it's not 1,000 cuts. Maybe it's being bludgeoned into submission
at this point. Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we can now go to everyone's favorite segment of this show, and that is Q&A. Take it away, Linnea.
All righty, let's see. Okay, so our friend Mike here asks, if the ice caps melt a bit because temperatures go up, do we know how much water will be absorbed into, for example, the Sahara and just land in general via rain and life versus just raising ocean levels? I mean, it's going to go into the water cycle, right?
Presumably, but I've got no idea how much and how it will change water cycles. Maybe Anthony has a better feel.
Yeah, and Anthony has dropped out, so we'll get him back in a bit. I think his the Wi-Fi was not so good.
He told us that his Wi-Fi was going to turn back into a pumpkin at the top of the hour, and that's exactly what happened. So I think he's gone for good.
Okay, well, yeah, I wouldn't even begin to be able to guess that calculation. I mean, it takes a while for water to move through the water cycle. So one of the effects of diluting seawater is that it can evaporate more. and you get some evaporative cooling as well at a local level. I don't know if we can even calculate how much that would be impacted over time.
But you know what? You know what it would impact
that are just
You know what it would impact that no one's talked about? So you're right. It cools the oceans. Everyone's saying, "Oh, the oceans are heating up faster than the rest of the world. Oh, it's more proof of global warming." Well, it cools the oceans. You know, one of the main components of sea level rise, according to climate change theory, is thermal expansion.
Yeah.
Is as the water heats up, it expands, and so that's part of the rise. Well, if this cools it, that means thermal expansion is going down, so sea level rise should slow.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of complicated calculations that go into this, and I'm sure that they try to put those downstream effects into their modeling, but I'm not sure how accurate it is, and I'm sure that they don't know.
Oh, I bet they don't even try and do it. Remember, they say they can't model clouds. They say they can't model all sorts of things. I bet they haven't even looked at this because it might undercut alarm.
Yeah. Okay, so Pill and Clam says that the answer is 42. I agree. I think that's probably right. All right. Kite Man Music has a funny question. Is it true that polar bears have gone extinct in Antarctica? And the answer is yes, they've gone so extinct that they were never there. It actually like went back in time and removed them from history. That's how extinct they are in Antarctica.
Like the song American Pie, they took the last train for the coast a long time ago.
Yeah. All right. William says, why aren't greenies celebrating the Iran war for raising oil prices by about $20 a barrel? Just because it's temporary?
They are celebrating it. I've seen dozens of articles saying this proves the need to get off oil and build more wind and solar. That this shows that we were right all along, that you can't rely on oil and gas, that it's cost you too much, it's not reliable, so we need more wind and solar. Now, if you need more wind and solar, if it's so cost competitive, the subsidies can still stay gone and they'll be building wind and solar, except that's not what's happening. So that tells me, but they are celebrating it. They love it.
And it is a temporary blip. Actually, I think I saw this week that the United States has now become the #1 oil exporter in the world. I think, jumping over the whatever Gulf state was #1, and it's because of the problems in the Persian Gulf, which will not be permanent. They will be ending hopefully sooner rather than later. The good news is we're still going to be ramping that up, and so oil prices are going to be coming down in the next few months, I think.
Yeah, I mean, my bet would be not this summer because oil prices almost always go up in the summer anyway. But it might moderate, and certainly in the fall. But I have no idea because I am not the foreign policy person. But okay, so this comment from John, I just wanted to bring it up because John said they did learn out west that when you drain lakes, it undermines the aquifers and they collapse, which also affects ground surface level, which is true. And it also is true on the coasts when you drain aquifers for water. That's part of what relative sea level rise is in certain areas, especially in the southeast. But that just gave me an idea for a nonsense study. And we need to contract someone to do this for climate purposes. We're gonna get a study going where we are going to see, we're gonna make an engineering model of a pipeline for water from the Arctic to the Southwest. And we're just instead of the melt going into the ocean, it's gonna go to Nevada. And we have just solved two problems at once. So government, send me some money and I will work up the coolest crayon drawing you've ever seen to show how this would work. All right.
Yeah, well, and all we need is to do some deep drilling, but on a small scale, lots and lots of little bitty holes to allow the water to go all the way down to the aquifers really quick.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an engineering problem, just like providing water for the coast when your aquifers are drained. We call it desalinization. We can figure this stuff out if we really need to.
Absolutely. All right. Mike asks, do we have any indication that the ex-vice president actually knows what those currents are? No.
I have no evidence. I have
Reason-
no evidence of that.
Yeah.
He often quotes his mentor, Roger Revelle, a climate scientist he learned under. He supposedly learned under in college, and then he basically misstates his position on climate change. So if he can't get that right, I'm not sure he knows what those currents are really.
All right.
But to be fair, neither do the climate models. They can't incorporate the large-scale ocean currents.
So Sammy the Smooth has a question that we definitely know the answer to. So there were COVID restrictions that lasted a long time. How much did that have an effect on anything? Nothing. So carbon dioxide emissions did not go down in any way that was significant, like noticeable when it's charted out. There's not even a blip on the Mauna Loa tracker. So take that for what you will. Let's see. Peter says, now the IPCC has dropped the RCP 8.5 and 7.0 scenarios. Will all of them have to be recalibrated? I see they still have global population growing to 14 billion and 5 times more coal being burnt. Do we know? I don't know. I don't think they have to recalibrate, because the scenarios are the scenarios that they have them programmed to a certain emissions level at a certain time periods and certain population growth and all that. They're dropping 8.5 at least because it's just totally improbable at best.
If you had it's impossible. If they had a bell curve of models, 8.5 was at the far end of the right, and they're just truncating it. That will move it all backwards. Now, I didn't know that they're still keeping global population at 14 billion and 5 times more coal. I think the coal is what was used for 8.5. So I'm not sure they're still doing that. But I don't think they'll have to recalibrate. They'll just lop off the extreme on one end and keep the extreme on the other end. So there's no evidence. Oh, no, the good side, that can't happen either. The bad side's gone. The good side will still stay at the low end, and they'll just move the bell curve. In the end, it's a modeling exercise. The models run way too hot, and that was before 8.5.
Well, let me ask this question related to that. So, the use of fossil fuels has continued to go up.
Yep.
The percentage of total energy use that is attributed to fossil fuels is pretty much the same, has been the same for decades. But yet our use of fossil fuels keeps going up. But the temperature rise has not been commensurate with the increase in our use of fossil fuels. So why aren't they adjusting their scenarios downward just based on that observation over the last 20 years?
Well, they just did. They dropped 8.5.
I know. What about the ones in the middle?
No, look, there's a problem. There's a serious problem there, in that every new report, the upper and lower range of where it could be almost never changes. It changes by a little bit. If your models are better, we're constantly told every new iteration of the report that the models have improved. Well, when models improve, the range of possible outcomes shrink, and you should over time settle on whatever the mid-range likely value is. It never shrinks. So the models haven't improved.
Yep. All right. Bogus says that my study idea is worth a $2 billion grant. I agree. Let's get on that. Come on, Chris Wright. We'll call it an energy project.
Come on, Chat GPT. Crank that out for me this afternoon.
Yeah, I would never. All righty. So David Vogt says, do the climate alarmists think we are headed the way of Venus? I have seen this in the news. I have seen articles, I'm guessing probably in The Guardian or maybe in The Conversation, that say that, the cause of Venus's current conditions was runaway climate change. And so as if they're like implying that that is anywhere in the cards for the state of this planet. I've seen it. I've seen it gently pitched as just kind of like a scare story because people know that Venus is, Venus. It's utterly uninhabitable. But yeah, that's I have seen it.
Uninhabitable? Does that mean I have to cancel my vacation plans there?
Well, you can ask the aliens that we're finding out about this week.
Yeah, maybe they can they're going to be your travel agent for you, Sterling. They'll take care of you.
There you go.
So Stephen Lindsay says, have you noticed this year is cooler than last year? Snow extent at a 20-year high for week 18 from as Rutgers says, and also UAH statistics. Yeah, this year is cooler than last year. The El Nino ended temporarily. It seems like it's probably going to come back this fall, but El Nino ended. The worst of the effects of Honga Tonga have kind of settled a little bit, although it'll probably persist for quite a bit longer in the upper atmosphere. I can't pull it up right now, but the month by month temperature reports definitely show that this year is cooler. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm not going to say that a single year is evidence of a trend. That's for sure.
No, but it's been actually a lot cooler here in Northern Illinois this year than I can remember over the past several years. Today it's 65 degrees, absolutely gorgeous, but it's been very chilly, and we're here almost in the middle of May. I'm glad to get the warm weather.
What aliens lived on Venus that caused climate change, says Energy Colonizer. See, we're bringing the show together. We're looping it back to what we talked about at the top of the at the beginning of the show here.
I didn't derail the show. I actually set it up for success.
You'd have to read the full reports to know that. And I haven't read the tens of thousands of documents they've released to know which aliens from Venus are causing climate change.
The Algordians. I'd believe that.
The man bear pigs.
Is it Venusians or is it well, if you're C.S. Lewis, it's Paralandrins. I don't know. I just don't know. Let's see. Another question. I think I'm all out of questions actually. Now we're just chilling with the chat.
There you go.
Yeah, they use too many fossil fuels. Let's see. Yeah, Michael here is coming in to ruin everything for all of us with facts by saying we are not tidal locked to show one side to the sun, so we will not have a Venus climate. You're ruining the fantasy, Michael. We're gonna.
That's the problem with our audience. They bring in too many facts.
Yeah.
It is all they care about is facts and data, not fantasies. So there you go.
People in our chat really know a lot about the planet Venus. So EJ Worm says, I'm sorry if it's actually a real name. I don't know how to read that out loud. High in Venus's atmosphere, where the air pressure is close to 1 bar, the temperature is quite livable, higher than Earth, but consistent with the distance to the sun. I've seen concepts of like the Venus cloud cities. That's a very cool sci-fi concept. That's a good one. Venus is cooked. That's true.
Mars is ours. I like it.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys. All right. Well, we have we've definitely run out the chat. Although Peter asks, must be more hurricanes on the way, right? Depends on who you ask. I think, did NOAA put out their hurricane forecast? I think it's supposed to be about normal this year, actually, even though
I haven't seen
it should be above normal.
I haven't seen the preliminary hurricane, but we do know that more hurricanes are on the way because we're entering hurricane season. There'll be more than there were last month and the month before that.
Yeah, we'll be covering hurricane season as we normally do now. It's kind of an annual thing with some hurricane experts come early June.
Yeah, once we get the report, I don't actually think that NOAA has put out their report yet, or their prediction for the season yet. Not the latest one anyway.
I'm gonna make several predictions. I don't normally do this, but I've been struck recently. It's my psychic powers have really improved. I'm going to predict that we are soon to see more wildfires for the year, that we are soon to see more heat for the year, and we will probably have some hot temperature records broken this year. And I'm willing to put money on all those predictions.
I think you might be right. My prediction for this summer and into the fall is that somewhere on the planet, a crop of some kind is going to have a bad harvest.
Oh, you're sticking your neck out there, Linnea.
The mealworm harvest is going to be absolutely crappy this year. That's for guaranteed. Hey, Linnea, there's some questions. I think I see them in the starred chat that we how we save these questions. I see some that were from last week. Do you not see them?
I already got rid of them. I don't see any.
I see them. Here, let me try. Do you see that up on the screen?
Oh, yeah, I do now.
Okay. Well, this so Albert, this might have been from last week, I think. Says he saw a science paper saying that Hunga Tonga volcano will have an impact at least until 2030. Have you guys seen that? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen people saying that, but I can't weigh in on that. I have no idea. Absolutely no clue.
Yeah, so
that would be an Anthony question.
Yeah, that would be an Anthony question, but it's my understanding that water vapor cycles out of the system much faster than that. It's a 10% increase, but what Hunga Tonga won't do is keep increasing temperature because it's going down over time.
Well, yeah. I have a question just related to that. Now that I think is there anything comparable to Hunga Tonga in the scientific record or in observational? It seems when it happened, it was described as all but unprecedented, and so there was really no way to really predict. I mean, was there anything else that you guys recall?
It's underwater. I think it'd be pretty hard. I'm sure there have been previous underwater major volcano eruptions, but I would venture to guess that most of them have not occurred in the satellite era, so it might have been harder to be even measuring, or impossible really to measure water vapor content in the upper atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean we just can't know. And when it happened in the past, since we couldn't measure either CO2 or water vapor, anything in the proxy data that would show an increase of temperatures based on tree rings or whatever, it'd be hard to tease out whether it was due to an increase in water vapor, CO2, or something else.
Yeah, I think so. And Polly asks, isn't the Hunga Tonga eruption affect multiple times more than the COVID pandemic? Decrease, I would say. Yes, but wasn't Hunga Tonga in 2023? Maybe yeah, I'm forgetting what year it was.
It was after.
It was after the big shutdowns, I think.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, I guess I'll hand it back to you, Jim. As much fun as I have chatting with chat, I will pass it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Linnea. And thank you to everybody in the chat, everybody participating in the show today. It's always so much fun being with all of you every single Friday. Thank you very much, Anthony Watts, who got kicked off his hotel Wi-Fi about 23 minutes ago. So I hope you enjoyed his time on the show. Thank you very much, Sterling Burnett and Linnea Lukin from the Heartland Institute. I also want to thank again our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, the CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and our friends at Heartland UK Europe. Find them online and in their socials, and please give them a good follow. And again, I want to thank our wonderful audience. It's so much fun bringing this show to the world every single week, and all of you here live with us make it even more fun. Thanks again, and we will talk to you again next week. Bye-bye.